Hello, guys. So we're back with our panel. I'm here social distancing with one of the panelists, so it's really, really good because I got to speak to her as well, and as well speak with the other panelists. And today we're going to talk about education. By the way, guys, if you guys can hear me or hear me a little fuzzy, kind of react and tell us in the chat box below so that we kind of have a feeling. And as well, I know I need to speak faster, slower, louder, softer, and all of that. Yeah. So I want to introduce to you our panelists for today. It's a very interesting group and mix of people that we have with us today. First of all, we have Tony Cuenca, teach for Austria. He's head of recruitment there. Maybe he will introduce himself later, but just a little bit for me to give you a brief introduction. So Teach for Austria, they actually work on solving education inequalities in their local communities. They're also a global organization that have specific offices in different countries. And then we have Stephanie, who is from Isaac in Europe. So she will actually be talking about how Isaac on a European level, what they think about what Isaacers think, since most of us are students, will actually opt into joining student organization as well, like her own personal experiences in education. And then we have Alia, who is with us today, and she is a student from the University of Vienna. We thought it would be really interesting to hop in someone who is currently in the to give us a little bit of insight of what she actually feels in her experience of what she's gone through the past 15 years, I would say. And then last but not least, we have Alex Pinza. He is the co-founder of an app called Scouts. I would recommend you to check them out if you're into sports. But as well, he lectures at TU and WU for entrepreneurship. So he will be giving us a little bit more of this innovation perspective into education, since it seems to be the new buzzword, or not seems to be, it's the new buzzword of, I think, the last 5 years. So let's jump right in. The first question that I actually want to ask is very simple. What it is, does the current system form the students to the needs of tomorrow? And the first person that I actually want to ask is actually Tony.
That was me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so hi everybody. If you look at my name, it's not Odosio, it's really Tony. I just using the account of my wife in Skype. Teach for Austria, real quick. I think you described it very well. We're working with disadvantaged kids. We want to live in a world where all kids, independent from the income and the education of their parents, can live a fulfilled life. And we think one tool to do so is education. So what we are doing is we are sending into the most challenging, where we see most kids that have disadvantages, we are sending excellent graduates there. We recruit them, we select them in a assessment center approach, and then we send them into the most challenging schools to make a difference there. And Teach for Austria sees itself as a leadership development program. So this is also to Isaac, right? This is something you're talking about, taking responsibility for problems you're seeing out there to really be part of this solution. And this is what we are doing on the basis of education in the most challenging schools. If you know Vienna, we are working, for example, in 10th district, Favoriten, 20th district, 16th districts. Those are the areas we are working in. And right now, there's 140 fellows out there currently working in schools, and we already have more than 300 alums that have already done the program. So when I talk about fellows, I talk about teachers in those schools. Okay. Now to your question, when does the current system prepare students for the needs of tomorrow? Depends on the school you're going to. And in the case of our schools, I can tell you no, it doesn't. Why is that so? Because we are working in schools where the kids already are very far behind the peers. When you look at it, you know, the kids whose parents don't have education and money are very far behind already. After 4 school years, they're already 3 years behind their peers whose parents have a university degree. So we have to catch up, you know, when it comes to knowledge, uh, skills, all of that. This is the first big hurdle, right? Now, when it comes to methods, didactics, we have schools are run in a very old school way. We are grading kids, you know, we everybody has to do the same. There's very not a lot of differentiation in the schools we are working in, and in the schools we are working in, you have to imagine that 86% of the kids in the classrooms we are working in have another mother tongue than German. And we are working in classrooms where you find kids from 15 different international backgrounds and language backgrounds, sometimes even more than that. So differentiation is a big thing. How can you reach all the needs of all those kids? And this is something very difficult, and the current school system is not set up for this. Neither are teachers that are working in these settings. So I would say right now, on a system level, we can discuss later what might be solutions. But the short answer is no.
Thank you so much. Before someone else to answer the question, I just wanted to remind you guys that you have the link to ask questions in the iPad right here. So if you guys have questions at all for our panelists, please send them over, and I will make sure that you get your answer. So with that being said, thank you so much for giving us insight into Austria and how schools are actually in Austria are preparing young people for the future, especially since Austria is one of the countries that actually offer public education, and to see that there are still flaws in the system, it's really interesting to see. But with that being said, I would also like to grab another perspective, which is Stephanie, of the matter.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I also wanted to say something to what Tony has been saying about the part of going into classes and then having 15 different backgrounds. And I think one thing as well in this topic is that we're still, our mindsets, or of many people, their mindsets are still in terms of seeing this as a setback and seeing this as a negative thing, rather than actually seeing how can we use this and thinking problem or solving oriented and solution oriented. Because in the end of the day, having 15 different backgrounds, or however many it might be, can also be a very big advantage in actually creating a better of the day. That's what we're moving towards: education, forming people that can live a responsible life and that can live it as well in a better state than they have found it in, rather than towards a little bit of the opposite that we might be moving into nowadays, talking about all the other issues that are arising from this. But yes, in general as well, coming to the question, now one of the topics that I think is becoming a lot bigger is, if you ask students, you say your studies prepare you for the job or for your world after, or even in high school, most people in my circle at least tend to answer, I just want the degree because I know that if I don't have the degree in my CV, I cannot get the job that I want to get. But in the end, they're going to actually have to do in other extracurricular activities, such as being part of ISEC or any other student organization, or learning them simply on the job. So we're still seeing this as maybe a matter of discipline of getting it done, but not seeing it as the knowledge that is actually needed in order to survive in this world, physically, mentally, on the job, whatever it is. Our whole view of seeing the system just has to change fundamentally to actually be able to cater what the world is needing now. And if we're looking at how old the system is, actually, we're just not catching up with it and not having the conversations that are needed to really fundamentally change something.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I completely agree. If you guys can see me, I was nodding the whole time because as a university student myself, I can completely resonate with that, which is sad, which is why we're having this panel today. On that note, I think something that we can all agree on is I think the thing that is really missing is that a lot of times in academia we're just learning facts and we're just learning basically the skill of how to memorize knowledge, but maybe less of how to process it, but as well how we can take our own take in these type of things. So my next question, which is actually goes into the direction of Alex, is how can we foster creativity, innovation, and the entrepreneurship aspect in school, whether it's at a young age or in university like you're teaching right now? What are the specific action steps that you would like to see in the school system?
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I also want to drop in with just two quick statements. So congrats to Tony and what those with Teach for Austria. Really think that this is an unbelievable program. Same with ISAC. So over the last 2 years, I had a couple of overlaps and synergies with ISAC, and I also do want to thank you guys because you're doing a tremendous job. Coming back to your question, in my opinion, the main objective as a teacher or professor or lecturer is to inspire and prepare the young people to succeed in a global economy. So everything is going more global. Everything is going more digital. So making especially entrepreneurship education, or maybe you can call it startups. I think it's a great thing, and it should also be a top priority at a national level. So I'm very, very convinced that young, very aspiring entrepreneurs to take them, especially at the very start, take them by the hand and lead them in order to maybe pursue that kind of career option. I think this is very, very important. And I think that when you talk about education, it's important to bring in practitioners. Yeah, so it's important.
These topics to help us and support us to move in the right direction in regards to putting these ideas and our thoughts into action and actually having them to last, rather than it's just a trial and error stage in a high school or a university project.
Thank you so much. To just pick a little bit of what you said before, on how we're just doing things to fulfill the needs of our professor, of our students, less than us actually making it applicable into what we want to do with our lives. What do you think of standardized testing? Do you think that it's an effective way on judging knowledge or judging education in general?
So I'm going to assume that your question is to me, yeah?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, it just cut for a second. I think standardized testing for me never really worked, because back in high school, I was never got good grades in high school exams, but I used to get good grades, or I balanced out my GPA with research papers that we had to do and essays that we had to write, because a bit in which I took the time and explored my passions in regards to something, and that was my strength. So I really am not a big fan of standardized testing, and I really hope that it changes along the time, because I don't think that, or everybody already knows that different people learn in different ways, and having everybody or testing everybody in some way is very demotivating and would restrict the person and their self-confidence in then excelling in life.
Thank you so much. I would actually like to ask the same question to in the room, or one of the educators in the room, which is Tony from Teach for Austria. So seeing that Teach for Austria actually goes to these underprivileged communities to balance out education in the country, what do you guys actually at Teach for Austria as educators think about standardized testing?
Yeah, there's two sides to standardized testing. But one thing, Elia, when you talked about in the very beginning about, you're having work on something that the professors already say the outcome and then grade you on this. In school, I call this Easter egg pedagogy, You know, hiding the Easter eggs, and then you have to find it, you know, hiding the knowledge, and then you have to find exact that answer. Yeah, that's not the best way of teaching and enabling people. Now, when it comes to standardized testing, there's two sides to it. On an individual level, I would agree totally with you. I don't think that standardized testing fits, you know, the needs, or that doesn't leverage really the talents and the potential of the people, right? Doesn't show really a scale from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. It's that's a very technical way of looking at people. Now, when you look at, for example, standard testing like PISA studies, those studies were really important to really point out the weaknesses of an educational system that doesn't work. So in our case, for example, when you look at the schools that we are working in, the standardized testing shows us kids are and what that means, right? Like that shows us that the educational system segregated from very privileged students to very disprivileged students. So it helps us to see, okay, what schools should we be working in? What schools should get more resources than others? That we can, like, let's say you have a school with a lot of poor and kids whose parents don't have a lot of education. They are starting from a very different point. So you have to put much more resources and thinking in how to get those kids on a pathway that leads them to a successful or fulfilled life. So in the testing was important for us to show the need of going into those schools, you know. On the other hand, on an individual level, yeah, it's a, I don't know how we call it in German, in English. In German, it's Spannungsfeld. It's like, you know, it's tension. There is a tension in that question, and I can't answer it either way.
Yeah, actually, I have a question out of personal interest, which is, you know, how I'm aware of the PISA test and all of these things, but I've always had to wonder that what does general knowledge, how can I articulate myself in the best way? So, for example, the PISA test, a lot of it is quote unquote general knowledge that a child should know in order for them to thrive in society, in order for them to, you know, be educated on general things. But then a lot of times, and the job that we have to do today, and you know, the knowledge that we have to get along the way, in 10 years' time, a lot of the knowledge that I learned as a third year student or like in school, in comparison to now as a person who's finishing university, there's a lot of general knowledge that I feel like I knew when I was younger, I should know right now, but a lot of it has just gone forgotten because of all of the different knowledge that I had to pile on over the years. So, in your perspective, how can we make sure that these education systems are making sure that, you know, we do have this general knowledge and that it's not just being taught to us as kids, but it's something that we can actually apply again and again and use as arguments or, you know, what do you say, in the further education we go, or even in our daily life. I'm not sure if you understood my question. Let me know if you didn't, but I would really like to hear your thoughts on that.
Can I jump in really quickly? I think the question what do we want to teach in our, do we want to teach subjects or do we want to teach people, you know? And the question about this is, I don't think that you have to put all the knowledge into the people.
I will give him a break and I will go into the next questions with our other panelists. And I think that I want to start with Alex about what do you think of how we can actually use more technology in education today in terms of teaching them, but as well using them as learning tools.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's already out there and available. So we just have to use the new technology. And I think what you saw, especially now, you know, during the pandemic, especially during the spring semester, it worked well. So we had, online sessions through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Hangouts and stuff. We were using, Slack, for instance, or pushing stuff to Trello, and everything, as mentioned, is out there. So you just have to design all courses in a way that the students and like the learners can engage with that kind of material or the content way better. Yeah. So you as a teacher or the university, they have to set that kind of environment. I don't think it's a good idea in order to ban laptops. Yeah. So they need to be in there, but I think it also needs to be handled a little bit stricter, in my opinion, because most students got their laptop or smartphone in front of them, and I'm sure they're not always using tech in order to participate with the content in class. Yeah. So I think, but in case there are clear guidelines, I think it's super important to open like classes up and let new tech in. So for me, this is a clear way that needs to be absorbed and supported big time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer. I would actually like to hear a youth perspective on the matter.
Yeah, thank you. So Alex already talked a little bit about the tools, and we know that technology is a big thing and it's evolving, and there's a lot of tools that are out there, tools that we don't even know of because it's developing so quickly that we're not always aware of the things that are happening. So I think it starts more from, first of all, understanding education should be in that and how we can use technology for that. So one part is, as Alex already talked about, in terms of like using the tools. Another one is actually building as well the capacity within our team in order to use them and how they can use them in a best way. Sometimes also with older generations, technology is seen more as a little bit of the enemy, and therefore we need to have the part of openness actually of teachers and students to more look into this peer-to-peer part, because we all know how sometimes you have the 7-year-old kid who knows better how to use an iPhone than we do because they've seen the functions faster than we do, but to be more open to have this peer-to-peer approach. And then on the other hand side, also, if you look at technology, if you look at programming and so on, essentially all those like programs are very problem solving. The approaches are always very problem solving. So if you look at programming languages and so on, in the end, this can as well help us, like putting this in the curriculums of youth from like a very early age on can also help us to think more as a solution-oriented society, and to stop maybe sometimes, I think as well in Austria, maybe this is very much my personal opinion, but we tend to complain a lot, and then sometimes we tend to not feel the need to take the action because complaining is more comfortable. So, but this can actually help us to become more solution-oriented and to see learning as an ongoing thing, rather than a thing that stops when I'm 18 and I'm with my degree, but to see it more as an ongoing thing.
Thank you so much, both of you. I was writing down questions like crazy because I have a follow-up question to that, and it's open to the floor for whoever wants to answer it. But for me, I think now that we're talking, especially in the last semester in schools and things like that, everyone has been having online schools. But at the same time, our economy is falling, and people, cannot afford, people who don't have computers, people who cannot afford computers. How should we tackle this inequality of education that that exists now already, but will be enhanced due to COVID-19? And how do we make sure that there are no gaps in education when a very key part of it will be technology and not everyone will be able to afford it?
I mean, maybe I can say one or give a perspective on that. Technology is a thing we have to think when we think about technology and learning. We have to think about a totally different approach in learning. How do you use this technology? You're not just shifting the stuff we are doing right now on PDFs and sending them on WhatsApp. That's not going to help, right? So how can we foster learning when it comes to online education? And I think it has a big chance of being in technology gives us a big chance, for them in their own tempo and in their own speed, with the really concentrating on their own interests, and then for the teacher being able to how do you say, go in there on a very individual level. After students having worked on a task, then being able to answer individual questions. So that will be a big chance. Now, when it comes, the technology that we are seeing out there, it's not only about that. I'm looking at the poorest kids that have not a lot of chances, and the pandemic hits them very hard. And not only because they don't have a computer, but also because, for example, they live in 60 square meters with 8 people. And there, I mean, who's going to use it and when? Are they going to be able to really, learn in that environment? And this is not going to happen, right? So I think I'm a very big fighter for the school as a physical space, because that physical space, however, it doesn't have to be a school building, right? In a very traditional way, it can be a different thing. This is open up for discussion, but I think it has to be a physical space where we'll be able to meet each other physically. And I think the technology can help us to prepare for those physical meetings. I prepare my own stuff, and then I go in and I come in with questions, concrete questions and tasks that I will solve in this physical space. So I think this physical space is very important mostly for the kids we are working with, because this gives them space of freedom and hopefully, fulfilling their potential as well, because they are very, I would say, I mean, if you look at the studies, around 36% of the kids we're working with weren't reached, by the schooling, by the remote schooling.
Yeah.
And reach doesn't mean calling one time. It means, reached in a way that they were able to learn. So, yeah, two things. First, physical space, but then using technology to improve the learning we are seeing right now in this physical space.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I want to add to the technology part that was just mentioned, and I think this is something where the social responsibility of big corporates or big tech companies, where it is the calling of their social responsibility, because now, especially in these, like, it's no secret, COVID is affecting everyone in the world, and everybody needs to work together to move forward, and they should use this as an opportunity to reach out to those who are less fortunate and those who have no access to these technologies that are needed to move forward. Because at the end of the day, especially in the world we live in today, there are many refugees due to war, due to, I don't know, climate change and so on, that have no access to this technology. And then if you look on a wider scale, that in 15 years, you have a whole generation who is less educated than the previous one. And I think this should be something like addressed as a social responsibility to all big corporations.
Thank you so much, Alia. Yeah, definitely something that I'm willing to think about. Alex, would you like to add anything on this matter?
To be honest, I think the panelists already made a couple of great statements and comments. Maybe one quick thing. Apart from all those big companies, could also be the time for major brands like Lenovo, HP, Dell, Apple, etc., to basically step up and maybe initiate some sort of a additional school program or COVID-19 free campaign. I don't know. Details to be discussed still, but I think it would be a great chance for those guys to take all their power and put it back into the society and start giving something back, maybe with those kind of social programs.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, with that being said, we are actually have 1 minute left, but I would not like to end the panel just like this. I would actually like to end a panel with one question that I would like all of our panelists to answer, which is, how do you think education will look like in 10 years? And how would you like education to look like in 10 years? So maybe we can start with Steffi, who's sitting right next to me.
Yes.
Socially distanced.
I think actually this question sums up a lot of the thoughts that we have, because we're seeing, okay, our curriculums are very old, they're not necessarily equipping us, then we have this very big issue of inclusion and like education just not being able to reach everyone, and very often the way the family we're born into or the country we're born into, where whatever it is our sentence whether we're going to receive good or not so good education. But at the end of the day, I think that wherever this path is going to lead us, the main thing is, if we look at this world and things changing, if we look at where we were maybe 1 year ago when it was not normal to wear a mask in public or things like this, the only constant in this world is change. So at the end of the day, our education needs to as well be adapted to preparing people for that, and not just teaching them the history of the past 2000 years, which also is important for them to understand the decisions to make, but to teach them, as well Tony said earlier, the skills that are needed to be in this world, the skills to take the decisions. And I think for that, that is something that we just cannot only outsource to learn on the job or to organizations, but that just needs to be an essential part of our education system.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Alex, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I think that education will be mandatory from age 3. So I'm now, thinking big. Yeah. So don't, hit on me. So students, I think, will also be placed in classes by age. Not by age, but by skills and competence and even potential. So this is also something I see coming earlier than later. And I think that the beginning of school will start with a physical activity, maybe even socially orientated. Yeah, so the children can access their energy before going actually to class. And I think that part of the school day might be spent on more interactive, more hands-on modules that students can complete at their own pace. So yes, there will be a lot of personalization, individualization, differentiation, but it's all about giving them the best environment to grow and develop.
Thank you. Alia?
Yeah, I agree with Alex 100%. I think there would be more ownership from schools in regards to different aspects, that education is not only based on what you read there one-to-one to memorize it, but there would be more ownership in regards to discussing other issues or other factors that a person goes through within his or her life. I think as well the curriculums would be more international based, so you would explore more different cultures, different histories, and so on, rather than focusing on your country or on the region where you were born. And I would also add to that I hope that it would be more interactive, because in the world today you have a lot of really cool technology, such as virtual reality, where you can legit experience and feel different topics or different themes. And I think that would be more and more integrated into the educational system.
Thank you. And last but not least.
Wow, now I have the last word. Always the most difficult. No, I mean, if I imagine education in 25 years, you know, I would like to see a school and a public school system that works so good that all the kids, no matter where their parents come from, how much money they have, come together and learn in that space, in that physical space called school. And I would like the public educational system to have a quality that they take all the kids, even the ones with the, you know, with the that come from very disprivileged backgrounds, takes them to a level where they then, when they finish school, can decide, okay, I'm going to go into that direction, studying, vocational school, whatever. I would like to see a public school system that is able to achieve that, and I would like to see a school system where people enjoy being there, as well as the kids and also the teachers. I would like the teachers to go there and say, this is the most important job that I'm doing. I would like society to see that this is the most important job. And I would like the best people out there, the best graduates, to go into those schools to make a difference. That would be the school system I would like to see.
Okay, thank you very much to all of our panelists.